We're going to start off in Psalms. I'm going to read just a couple of scriptures that David wrote in Psalms. And then we're actually going to go to 1 Samuel, and we're going to see the context of what was going on when David wrote this psalm. So I'm going to be reading in Psalm 54, verses 6 through 7. David writes, I will sacrifice a freewill offering to you. I will praise your name, Lord, for it is good. You have delivered me from all of my troubles, and my eyes have looked in triumph on my foes. Now I have an advantage because I had an entire year to work on this message. And it may not seem like that to some people, but I did have a year. And so I got to do some research, and when David wrote that line, when David said, you have delivered me from all my troubles, what he really meant was all of his troubles. There is not one area of your life that God cannot fix. There is not a single enemy, an addiction, an illness, or a trouble that my God cannot deliver you from. So say that with me from home. You, God, have delivered me from all my troubles. Now, if we were Bible detectives or Bible scientists, I think most people call those theologians, but I prefer the labels that I use better. And we wanted to find out the context of what was going on in David's life when he wrote this psalm, not knowing what we know now. And we were to start doing some sort of experiment and see, when is it that he wrote this? We might come to the conclusion that he wrote this psalm right after he killed a lion or a bear. We could see David sitting by a campfire and sewing a nice, one of the coolest robes in the world. On one side it was bear skin, and the other side it's lion skin. And David starts talking about, I will praise you, God, for you have delivered me from all my troubles. Or we might think that as soon as David has struck Goliath, he runs up to him and he's got one foot on the throat of that giant, and he's reaching for the sword, and this song comes to him, and before he cuts off the giant's head, he breaks his pad out, starts writing this song. Or we might even fast forward a little later and think that maybe after David had led Saul's troops out against the Philistines and came back victorious, and he's coming in through the castle walls, and everyone's at the victory parade singing, and David begins to hum the lyrics to this psalm, you have delivered me from all my troubles. Or we could even think it's one of his more somber victories when David's army defeats Absalom's army and the kingdom is returned back to David. And perhaps while he is down at the gate welcoming the soldiers back, this psalm comes to his mind. And those are all good guesses. And in my opinion, those are all appropriate times to write such a beautiful psalm about God delivering you and giving you triumph over your enemy. But as we're going to learn, that is not when this psalm was written. David actually wrote this psalm, Psalm 54, while he was in hiding in the wilderness. While Saul was chasing him down with an army, David writes, I will sacrifice a freewill offering to you. I will praise your name, Lord, for it is good. You have delivered me from all my troubles. My eyes have looked in triumph on my foes. He says, I will praise your name, Lord, for it is good. David knew that my situation may not be good, but you, God, you are good. My diagnosis that I have, it may not be good, but you are good. The storm that I'm facing right now is not good, but God, you are good. And I know, God, that you have called me and that there's a promise over my life. So I will praise your name. Even when I'm on the run, even when the enemy is after me, I will praise your name. Now, I want us to take a journey with David to the wilderness of Ziph. And I realize now, I was born in 1986, that I may have grown up in some of the best times in the world. And I feel sorry for those people who grew up in a world without Mr. Whitaker and Whitson. When I read the Bible, I take a trip in the imagination station, and I'm there. I'm part of it. I can smell what's going on in the story. What we're about to read would make an excellent episode of Adventures in Odyssey. I'm going to be reading from 1 Samuel 26, 1 through 11, and this is going to detail what David was going through when he wrote that psalm. It says, then the Ziphites went to Saul at Gibeah and said, is not David hiding on the hill of Hakilah, which faces Jeshimon? And then I went and looked up what Ziphites mean. And if you translate that from the original Hebrew text, that means tattletale. Some losers, sounds like, hey, are you looking for this guy? We know where he's hiding. So Saul went down to the desert of Ziph with his 3,000 select Israelite troops to search there for David. Saul made his camp beside the road on the hill of Hakilah facing Jeshimon, but David stayed in the wilderness. When he saw that Saul had followed him, he sent out scouts and learned that, that's right, Saul has definitely arrived. And then David sent out and went to the place where Saul had camped. He saw where Saul and Abner, the son of Ner, the commander of the army, had laid down. And Saul was lying inside the camp with the army encamped around him. And David asked Ahimelech the Hittite and Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, Joab's brother, who will go down into the camp with me to Saul? I will go with you, said Abishai. So David and Abishai went to the army by night, and there was Saul lying asleep inside the camp with his spear stuck in the ground near his head, and Abner and the soldiers were lying around him. And Abishai said to David, today, God has delivered your enemy into your hands. Now let me pin him to the ground with one thrust of the spear. I won't strike him twice. Another version says, I will only need to strike him once. He meant business. Abishai is telling David, today you can stop running. Today you can go from being a fugitive to being a king. Today God has answered your prayers. But in a strange turn of events, but David said to Abishai, don't destroy him. Who can lay a hand on the Lord's anointed and be guiltless? As surely as the Lord lives, he said, the Lord himself will strike him, or his time will come and he will die, or he will go into battle and perish. And I find this kind of odd because David literally listed every possible thing that can happen. And I was like, well, I don't think that takes a whole lot of faith, David. He said either this can happen, this can happen, this can happen. This reminds me very recently during our blizzard, right before it started on the Monday, which was Martin Luther King Day, a holiday, Jack is running around our house and he stubs his toe. I mean, he gets it good. And this isn't the first time it happened, but he comes to me and says, Dad, I think I broke my toe. And I don't know a whole lot, but I do know that if your toe is still pointing straight, there's not a whole lot that they're gonna do, especially on a holiday. And so I said, buddy, I think it's gonna be okay. It looked bad, but it was still pointing straight. Well, the blizzard comes and everything shut down and Jack's still hobbling. So about a week later, Jack comes to me and he said, I really think I broke this toe. And I look at it and now the bruising has traveled up his foot. And so I begin to think, well, he might have actually broke a foot bone and that would be something that we should look at. So I take him to go get x-rays. And right when we're gonna walk into the clinic, he pauses me and he looks at me and he had just the confidence of a doctor come upon him. And he goes, you know, Dad, either I broke my toe or I didn't and I'm just overreacting. And I was like, that's literally all the options there are. That's the only two things it could be, but that's what David is saying. David had this confidence that these things will happen to Saul, but I know one thing, I don't have to be in the middle of any of it. God will take care of it. Verse 11 says, but the Lord forbid that I should lay a hand on the Lord's anointed. It's not my fight, is what David's saying. Now get the spear and the water jug that are near his head and let's go. For the next few moments this morning, I want to talk to you on this subject, not like this. Not like this. Lord, I thank you for this opportunity that we have to gather online. We know that you are not limited by time or distance. So Lord, I ask that you have your way in this service. We praise your name. Amen. Now, walking back through these scriptures we just read, it says that Saul marches with his select troops. He picked the best of the best. Saul has the special forces hunting down David. And I want to tell you that whenever God is moving in your life, the enemy is going to attack you with all that he has. When God has called you and you begin to march forward towards that calling, the enemy, the devil, is not just going to sit by and passively let you go. No, there's going to be opposition that comes against you. Could it be that the opposition that you are facing is directly proportional to the amount of promise that God has on your life? Maybe these attacks are coming against you because of what God has put inside of you. Or it could be that that you've made some poor decisions and now you're paying for them. I know I've been there. Sometimes I'm like, God, why are you giving me just this hectic schedule? And then God reminds me of all the free time I had when I did nothing with it. And I'm like, oh, that's a fair point. That's a fair point. But in David's case, and probably in your case as well, the attack against David was because Saul was afraid of David. So David looks out and he sees 3,000 special force soldiers making camp near his position. And he says, Ahimelech, will you go down there with me? And that guy's just radio silent. He's acting like he didn't even hear. He's just kind of looking. Now, he's not making eye contact at all. He does doing this. So David moves on and he says, Abishai, will you go down there with me? Now we have to realize that Abishai, he's a dog. We're going to talk about more of him in a minute, but he looks at David and he's like, man, I thought you would never ask. Let's go. So maybe Abishai and David, they camouflage themselves some way. I'm not sure if they put mud on themselves or if they have a ghillie suit, but they find a way to sneak into this enemy's camp. When they sneak into the camp, and I can just see it, they're stepping over these sleeping soldiers. And in my mind, Abishai, he's a little bit of a prankster. He's just too willing to get into danger. And so while they're walking through, I can see him putting like the other soldiers like hands in warm water and kind of giggling. And maybe he's sprinkling itch powder in the sheets, and he's changing the alarm clocks on their phone and taking selfies with the sleeping guards. Abishai, to me, he's a little unstable. He's a little unhinged. But whenever you're 2 against 3,000, he's the kind of person you want with you. And as they get to King Saul, sleeping so peacefully, Abishai says, let me pin him to the ground. See what I mean? He's just a little unhinged. And I got to think, how close do you think David was to letting Abishai kill Saul? I spent a lot of time preparing for this message wondering, how hard of a decision was that for him to make? Because David, there's a huge backstory. We don't know exactly how long, but it had been approximately 8 years since Samuel visited the house of Jesse and anointed David to be king. 8 years, David is walking around with a promise that hasn't happened yet. In that time frame, David has played the harp for Saul in the residence of where he's been anointed to live and be king. In that time, David has defeated Goliath, married King Saul's daughter, led the army of Israel to many great victories. David has been so close to being the king. He has lived in the palace, commanded the army, had the respect of the people. David had been so close, but now he's being chased into the wilderness by the same army he used to lead. And I wonder if David thought, I've missed my calling. Did David ever feel like he was supposed to seize the moment when he was in the palace, commanding the army, when he was respected by the people? Should I have made a move? Should I have done something with my own power? Maybe I should have acted sooner. And that's the question that I want to ask you. Have you ever been so close to your promise that you could taste it? Have you ever been so close to a breakthrough that you've been praying for that you could see yourself on the other side, only to wake up and realize that you still have not made it across? If you have been there, I want to tell you that God hasn't made a mistake and he hasn't forgotten about you. And there is not a promise that's too big for God to deliver. God will be faithful to his word. So in the end, my conclusion is I don't even think for a moment that it crossed David's mind about killing Saul, because David replies with, the Lord forbid that I should lay a hand on the Lord's anointed. David truly believed what he wrote in Psalm 54 when he said, you have delivered me from all my troubles. You, God, not me, not my will, not my power, but you have delivered me. If the promise hasn't happened yet, it's because God's not done working. If I haven't seen it yet, it's because there's still more to the story being written. David had the faith that it would be the Lord who delivered him from his troubles. What David was telling Abishai was, not like this, not like this. I will be king, but not like this. The promises of the Lord will come true, but not like this. This morning I'm telling you that your miracle is coming, but not like this, not by your own power. Your breakthrough is coming, but not like this. It's not going to be on your own timeline, but on God's. Your miracle is coming, but not like this, not by your own hand, but by the Lord's. Not like this. Now, I want to address all my students right now. Before you start dating, before you start making sweet eyes at the other guy or the girl, before you start planning your futures together and wondering if you're going to be dog people or cat people, if you're going to have 2 kids or 4 kids, before you start thinking about all of that, I want you to understand, but not like this. You will find someone special. Your marriage will be blessed. You will live happily ever after, but it won't come by cutting corners. It won't come by sacrificing morals. It won't come by sacrificing holiness. A blessed relationship, a blessed marriage, a blessed life comes in God's way and in God's timing. So before you get all serious with this boy or that girl, you need to let them know. You can let them know, I think I love you. I think you may be the one. I think this is something special, but I'm here to tell you, not like this. Not like this. I'm not going to take the blueprint of this world. I'm not going to take the dating advice of this world. I'm going to do this God's way. Not like this, not like the way of this world, not on my timeline, not by my way, but by God's way. I've seen how the world dates. I've seen what they do, and I've seen the results they get. So I will say, not like this. For those of you who are building careers, maybe you're building your wealth, you can understand the concept, not like this. God will bless you. God will honor your commitment, but not by sacrificing your relationship with God, not by sacrificing your time with the family, not by sacrificing your kids, not by backstabbing coworkers and killing your testimony to get ahead. God will bless you, but not like this. We have to trust His timing, His order, His process. To really understand how difficult of a decision this was for David to make in such a hurry, in such a moment to tell Abishai no, we need to understand more about Abishai, his companion into the enemy camp. And I know this morning that I'm preaching about David, but a huge part of me, or almost all of me, relates more with Abishai than with David, because the opportunity is there. It's in front of me. Seize the moment. There's no time to pray is what he thinks. There's no time. I must capitalize now. Make this happen. Abishai was a nephew to David from his sister, so more than comrades in the army, they were family. Abishai had been and continued to be completely loyal to David their entire life. Later in David's life, Abishai actually saves David in a battle from being killed by a giant. Abishai had been a commander in David's army when David was commander, and he defeated the Philistines when David needed to divide his army. Abishai was a true warrior. He is listed as one of David's mighty men, or one of the mighty warriors. In fact, he was captain of the three toughest guys, and Abishai was the head of them. At one time, he killed 300 men with his spear in a single encounter. Needless to say, when he told David, I only need to strike him once, he meant what he said. So when David's nephew, when his friend, when his comrade offers to end his misery and put him on the throne, that is a pretty sweet offer. But I want to warn you this morning to be careful of the friends that you keep. Be careful of those around you who want to see you succeed more than they want to see you blessed. Abishai loved David, but he didn't understand the calling that was on his life. Likewise, you have people in your life who they love you. They truly love you, but they don't understand the calling that God has put. They don't understand your consecration. They don't understand your boundaries. They don't understand the lines that you won't cross. And so be careful that you don't cave into the peer pressure that they have, because the calling is for you. Your promise is for you, and you're the only one who can truly know it and truly understand it. Abishai wanted to see David advance. He wanted to see David get his promise, but he wanted to see it so bad that he was willing to sidestep the process that God had. Your promise from God is for you. Do not cave to those around you. David had the mindset of not like this. David knew that if he attained the kingdom on his own, he would have to maintain it on his own. And I want to tell you this morning that you don't want a job that God did not give you. You don't want a promotion. You don't want a spouse. You don't want an opportunity that does not come from God. David wanted God's will, but he was also disciplined enough to want God's will at God's time in God's way. God's will, but my way is wrong and it won't be blessed. God's will, but my timing is a sin and won't be blessed. It would be 5 more years until David became king. But you know what? When Saul finally died, David was ready. So you might be thinking, well, what is the lesson here? Because this message sounds very simple. Are we to simply do nothing? Ever? Just be passive Christians? And I would say absolutely not. And that is a great temptation to just sit by and see what happens, but absolutely not. Pastor Jared has been speaking to us about being active, about being intentional with our walk with God. And a part of maturing as Christians is realizing that not every opportunity is a gift from God. We should be intentional, and we should make short-term and long-term goals, but we should also have the discernment to know that not every opportunity is from God. 7 years ago, roughly, I got a text from a friend. And it was for a career-changing opportunity that I wasn't even looking for. But it was an amazing opportunity. It was to be the chief CRNA in a mid-sized hospital that belonged to a much larger hospital system. And I wasn't looking for this position. But it seemed like such a great opportunity at that 7 years ago, I was so much younger. And the friend who offered me this position was doing it out of kindness to me and my family. They were really looking out for me and my goals. And so I was thinking about it, and at the 11th hour, after much prayer on the subject, I heard a message where God spoke directly to me, and I pulled my name out of that job opportunity. And shortly after that, that hospital system had a major shakeup. The person who ended up taking that position had their life turned upside down. They eventually got removed from that job, and they actually blacklisted from working for any hospital in that system. When the dust settled, I can remember thanking God that I did not go about it my own way. In fact, I still thank God for saving me from that moment. I want to succeed, but not like this. I want God's will, God's way, and in God's timing. If we continue reading 1 Samuel 26, David actually gives us the recipe for trusting in God and relying on his sovereign power and not on ourselves. David and Abishi sneak into the camp, and they take Saul's spear and his water jug, and then very smartly they leave, and they get to a safe distance away. And David calls out to Saul to let him know that once again, David has saved Saul's life, and that Saul should stop chasing him. And Saul and David have this dialogue back and forth. And Saul regrets his actions. He regrets ever chasing David into the wilderness. And he is thankful that David did spare his life. And in verse 23, David tells Saul, "The Lord rewards everyone for their righteousness and faithfulness." Righteousness and faithfulness. Here, righteousness refers to aligning ourselves with God's will. And faithfulness is a steadfast trust in God, total dependence on God to deliver on the promise that he spoke. Even while being pursued by his enemy, David says, "You have delivered me from all my enemies." Even on the run, he is saying, "I have been delivered." Even when the opportunities to obtain his promise seem to have come and gone, David remembers the words of Samuel from 8 years prior, and he trusts that God will deliver on what he promised. This morning, I want to encourage you and remind you that the key to your breakthrough is in righteousness and faithfulness. Maybe you have been waiting 8 years on your promise, or maybe it's been 13 years. But I'm here to tell you, don't give up. Don't take matters into your own hands. It will come. The Lord blesses those who remain righteous and faithful. Perhaps you've come so close to your breakthrough, and now you're worried that you've missed the chance. And you begin questioning yourself, where did I miss it? Where did I miss it? I want to tell you that God has not forgotten what he has said. In whatever space you're in where you're watching this, I want you to make a commitment to God that you will remain righteous and faithful, because that is who the Lord will bless. In this moment, I would like to say a closing prayer over you. If it's safe where you are, if you can close your eyes. If it's appropriate to pray with the people in the room with you, you can do that. But Lord, you see those who doubt, who question whether they will ever get to their promise. But Lord, we thank you for this word and this reassurance that you are in control. This morning, Lord, we dedicate ourselves to righteousness. We are going to align our expectations with your will. We're going to adjust our plans, not for us, Lord, but for your will. We dedicate ourselves this morning to you for faithfulness, a complete trust in you. If you said it, Lord, it will come to pass. You are not a man that you should lie, Lord. Your word is true. We are believing and trusting in your promises to come at your time and in your way. So, Lord, this morning, we sacrifice a free will offering to you. We will praise your name, Lord, for it is good. You have and you will deliver us from all of our troubles, all of our enemies. And our eyes have looked in triumph over our enemies. We praise and we bless your name. Amen.
Thanks for joining our online worship experience. We hope that it has been a blessing to you and your family.
We would love to connect with you. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube, or you can go to www.point.church and connect with us there.
If you would like to partner with us in giving, you can download our app, or you can go to point.church and click Give.
Again, thank you so much for joining us today. We look forward to worshiping with you again soon. Have a blessed day.